All right, everyone, welcome into KBO Chats Live. I'm Sam Pasco alongside Eric Halterman, and we're here to give you everything you need to know about KBO today and the weekend. We're off. We're normally Monday and Thursday. Today is Friday, but we still got some great games and even a bonus game because of a cancellation yesterday. So we got 6 games today, 5 tomorrow. Eric, how you doing? How you feeling? You had some MLB draft coverage. How you feeling with some Korean baseball now?
Yeah, nice to get back. Had a little break, remembering what happens on this side of the ocean. Yeah, we did a ton of MLB draft coverage yesterday. I'd recommend it for anyone playing in MLB Dynasty leagues. We wrote up notes on every single player drafted. That's 160-ish names or so. So if you're looking to dig deep and win your fantasy league 8 years from now, definitely recommend taking a look over there.
You never know. A 4th rounder could have some great value. You never know. You never know. So now back to some live baseball now, Major League Baseball. We're seeing all the passing tweets, all that chaos, but we have some good old KBO action. So let's dive in here. We have our great lineups, like Eric said. Check out rotowire.com. It's that easy. So lineups, let's first start with that KT Samsung game. It was rained out. There was a weather thing yesterday. Now we have a doubleheader. We have first Despaigne against Buchanan, and then another doubleheader today. Tell me, what do you think about this series today from a fantasy perspective? What are you looking at here?
Yeah, a quick note that the main slate on both DraftKings and FanDuel only includes the first of those games. So those lineups will lock at 1 a.m. ET, as you see there, and the second game won't be included. That first game should be good fun with Despaigne and Buchanan. They've both had really up and down seasons so far. Despaigne was great through his first 5 starts. Then he gave up 10 to the Bears and 4 in his most recent start. I forget who it was against, but nobody all that good. Buchanan, 15 of the 16 runs he's given up all season have come in just 2 starts, including also 10 runs in one of his. It's rare that you see 2 pitchers who've given up 10 runs in a start this season, but who are both actually pretty good. But as you can see, he's been quite dominant his last 3 times. He's only given up 1 run in his last 3 starts, and look at those teams he's playing against. The Bears and Dinos has 2 of those. So he's very much on a high lately. He was my top recommendation on today's cheat sheet, even though he's playing the Wiz, who have a good lineup, and he's playing in Daegu Samsung Lions Park, which is the most hitter-friendly park in the league. Given the way he's pitching lately, he's still somebody that I'd be very much interested in.
Yeah, Buchanan, when you look at these stats, outside that one bad start against the LG Twins, he's really performed. And, I mean, I liked him. I was the only pick I had today for the KBO show. And when you look at matchups and you talk about who he's facing great competition in the Dinos and in the Bears and has had great success against both of them. But I'm interested in your thoughts on this KT Wiz team, because the last time they played, 2 days ago, it was still, they dropped, a good amount of runs. They have one of the best, pulling up their team page here. They dropped 13 runs on the Kia Tigers, and they were pretty cold if you look at their streak here. So, but yet they still score, the 3rd most runs in the league. What do you think about this KT matchup? Do you think they're going to trend back towards their average, or, kind of go back towards that losing streak ways they had previously?
Yeah, they're definitely more interesting now that they've got their star 20-year-old slugger Baeko Gong back. He was out for 3 weeks with a wrist injury. He was back at the start of this week and didn't get a hit in the first 2 games, and then he had a huge game yesterday, which generally was in line with the rest of his team. So they're definitely good enough to make Buchanan a high-risk play, but he's got the talent to overcome it anyway. But it's definitely a high-risk, high-reward type play, and there's a chance that you lose the contest because you played Buchanan, and there's a chance you win because of him.
So we got difference maker in Buchanan. Now let's go back to, because you said the second game isn't as important because of the DraftKings, the situation they have it set up right now.
Yep.
Okay, so
not as important for fantasy purposes, obviously.
Not as important. So now we got talking about that KT. They just played the Kia Tigers in their last game. Speaking of this Kia Tigers team, they're taking on the SK Wyverns. Tell me, what do you think here, Preston Tucker, Jamie Romack? I know the Wyverns, they started cold, 11-22 now. Decent, maybe not the best, but could they give the Tigers, maybe a good run for their money in game 2 in the series?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more interesting series. The Tigers are a bubble playoff team. The Wyverns aren't close to the bubble just yet, but they're a team based on how they did last year, where they were tied for the best record in the league. I would think they're one of the teams that has a chance to make a push. So they really, if that is to happen, this is the kind of series where they need to prove that they can beat decent teams. There's a couple interesting pitchers going tonight. Ki Young Im for the Tigers and Sungwon Moon for the Wyverns. I'd be pretty interested in either one of them. Im for the Tigers didn't do much at all the last couple of years, but he's got a good ERA, as you showed there, and it's backed up by his underlying numbers. And Moon for the Wyverns, that ERA isn't very good, but he's struck out 33 and walked just 6 on the season. And he's only allowed 3 runs over his last 2 starts. So he seems to be trending up. He's a lot better than that ERA suggests. And the Tigers are very much a pitching first team, so they're like 6th-ish in scoring, I think. So they're not a team you should be afraid to use pitchers against.
Yeah, about five, just over 5 runs a game. They're ranked 6th, like you said. But on base, they do walk a decent amount. Is that a factor at all? They got the 3rd highest on base percentage in the league and the 3rd highest walk rate. Is that a factor at all?
I mean, it goes into what makes their offense decent. Though keep an eye out for Hyung-Woo Choi, who normally hits in the heart of their order. He's a veteran slugger. He left last night or this morning's game with, I think it was a sore back. Yep, there you go. So if they're without him, he's their clear, I think, 2nd best hitter behind Preston Tucker. Usually bats right behind him. And so if they're without him, that definitely takes them from being mediocre offense to below mediocre offense and makes Moon even more interesting, I think.
Interesting. So we got some interesting plays here with pitching and hitting, seeing, of course, injury dependent. Moving now to the Lotte LG series here. We saw Dan Straley throw an absolute gem. Got no decision yesterday, though, but still solid performance. How are we feeling about Lotte now without their ace now instead Park on the bump for them?
Yes, another one where you've got an interesting matchup. The Giants, I don't think they're necessarily for real, despite being over 500. They were weirdly hot early and then kind of played up to expectations. Since then, I think they won their first 5, so if you throw those out, they're 4 games under since then. And they really could have used a win with Straley on the mound if they're making a playoff push. If you look at the 2 pitchers going the weekend, I would definitely favor the Twins in both. Se-Woong Park for the Giants tonight is pretty deserving of his not good ERA. And then Adrian Sampson on Sunday, as a foreign pitcher, you give him the benefit of the doubt for a little bit longer. He's only had 3 outings, but none of them have been particularly good. He was decent last time out against the Eagles, but I'm not sure if that counts for much since it was the Eagles. The Twins will be a lot tougher. Whereas the Twins have Woo-Chan Cha going tonight, who's solidly average to better at most things so far this year, and then Casey Kelly, who's one of the better pitchers despite his bad ERA. So I would be pretty interested in both Twins starters, especially because the Giants are near the bottom in most offensive categories. Biggest piece of news for the Twins, though, is that Roberto Ramos just went on the injured list. He hurt his ankle in a doubleheader the other day and then also woke up with a sore back. It's worth noting that in the KBO, the injured list, despite I think being called a 10-day injured list, doesn't actually have a time frame associated with it. I'm not sure of the specifics, but as far as we know, he's going to be out this entire series. So don't count on him the next couple days, which does definitely weaken the Twins lineup, but not necessarily enough to make me interested in either Giant starter.
Interesting. So the Ramos injury, I would think, would be the biggest headline here, but the Twins, they still have a solid record overall. Are you a believer in this Twins team? Because you talked about the Giants, and when you look at their foreign players outside Straley, I don't know if I believe in any of them. Machado and Sampson, just quite yet. They haven't been proven. But on the Twins side, Casey Kelly, pretty good. Tyler Wilson and Ramos. When you take out Ramos out of that mix, do you think the Twins have enough to maintain their 21-12 record?
It's definitely a blow, but I think they're still possibly a playoff team without him. They've got another former major leaguer in their lineup in Hyun-Soo Kim, who went over and had a mostly unsuccessful stint with the Orioles and briefly the Phillies. But any player in this league who's good enough to have played at all in MLB is one of the better hitters in the KBO, and he's hit like it this year. He doesn't have a ton of power, but he hits a bunch of doubles and seems to be on base all the time. So he's still worth a look, even without Ramos hitting behind him. And also another guy recommended on today's cheat sheet is their number 3 hitter, Young Taek Park. He's a 41-year-old who's the career all-time hit leader in the KBO. He is mostly just a singles hitter at this point. He doesn't have much power, but if he's hitting third right next to Hyun-Soo Kim in a pretty good lineup, he's still somebody I'd be interested in, even though you're probably not getting more than a couple singles. But his lineup position should help him score and get more RBIs than he'd had in the past when he was hitting lower in the order.
Yeah, he's getting some good plate appearance numbers right now, and has been hot lately. Couple game hit streak right now, and he had a 3-hit game not that long ago. So I like that. I like that pick. Now moving on, where are we here? Another. I'm gonna go back here. So many great resources here on rotowire.com. I can't even keep track of where all our great pages are here. So moving on, we got the Deuce and Bears Hanwha Eagles series. The poor Eagles, man, they just cannot stop losing. I really thought they'd win at some point, before last time we spoke, I thought they'd have a win by now, but they don't. Still now the only team with single-digit wins. I really don't know what to say about this Eagles team. I mean, you look Jared Hoying, maybe. I don't know. Is it just all Bears here? I mean, I want to root for the Eagles just because just get the double-digit wins, please, but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see if they even reach double-digit wins on the season. Tonight is a huge game. By some metrics, you could call it the biggest game of the year. It's a chance for history to be made because the Eagles are tied for the longest losing streak of all time in the KBO with 18 losses in a row. If they lose tonight, which they all probably will, they'll break the record. So if you want to see history being made, that's one to keep an eye on. Yeah, the Eagles, man, they needed to get a win against the Giants, and they didn't even come close because, as you can see in their upcoming series, they're playing the Bears right now, and then they have the Twins and the Dinos. So it's not looking up anytime soon. If they don't, I don't see them being close to favored in any of those games. They haven't even come within 3 runs this month. They're not even competing in games these days. So there's pretty much no circumstance in which I'd own an Eagle. I recommended a couple earlier in the week, and they had a complete dud, so I'm off them for the next 2 or 3 months. Don't want to make that mistake again. They're throwing a couple righties. Sung-Ju Han tonight is making his KBO debut against the Bears. It's just really unfair to the kid. He's 19 years old, I think, and has never pitched at this level before, and is trying to prevent his team from making the wrong kind of history and will be stuck facing the Bears to do it. It's not the most fair assignment, but I'd be looking to get as many Bears in the lineup as I can today. Even Warwick Soppold on Sunday, I've said before, I'm not really a big fan. In his best days, he'll go 6 innings with 2 runs and 2 strikeouts and get a loss. And against the Bears, I don't know if he'll even do that. So pretty much all Bears all the time. Neither of the Bears starters are guys I'm ordinarily interested in. Hee Kwon Yu and Wonju Jang, who's going to be making his season debut after posting ERAs over 9 each of his last 2 years. But it's the Eagles, so maybe you run either of them out there.
Yeah, I mean, looking at all these red L's here, I mean, when do they score more than 5 runs? Maybe once here.
Yep.
Back on May 29th. I mean, this is a really bad stretch, and I see why you'd want to be avoiding them. They haven't been turning it around anywhere, close to looking like they have some sort of potential and hope. Do you kind of count that to poor decisions in the American players they have on the team? You mentioned Warwick Soppold, he's actually Australian. But do you look at, Hoying with his down year, and Chad Bell not being what they expected him to be coming off an injury. Do you expect it to do you kind of count it towards that, deficiency, or do you think there's fundamental issues with the core of this team that you just want to entirely avoid?
I mean, it seems like basically everything. I mean, they're not getting the production that you expect out of your three stars. Hoying's been quite bad, but they don't have any local talent either. I mean, they maybe have one hitter with an above average OPS, and so there's just nothing. I mean, I don't think you can chalk it up to one or two things. They sent down 10 players over the weekend and brought up 10 more, and absolutely nothing changed. So, yeah, I don't have a very thorough analysis other than just about everything is wrong.
I don't blame you. Look, 10th in basically or literally every category that matters. Runs per game allowed, themselves scoring it, just a complete mess. So hopefully we'll see some history tonight. I'd like to see them get the record now, actually, now that you mentioned that. So hopefully we see some history. But you never know. This Eagles team always disappoints, so maybe they'll just go out there to win and then lose another, 17 in a row and then win. So who knows here. We got some comments here in the section. Comments are always open here. We got, how's the current weather look? So Eric, how much do we look at weather when we're constructing our lineup? Because we did see actually two rainouts, one in the previous series, and now we have a makeup game with the KT Wiz and the Samsung Lions. Is that something we should be worried about at all when we look at our lineups before we talk?
It's definitely something to worry about tonight. You can see we've got some weather graphics in there. The amount of games that look to be threatened have kind of changed throughout the day, but it still looks like it's everybody except for Tigers, Wyverns, and Giants, Twins that has at least some risk. Last I checked, none of that seemed to be at all like a guaranteed rainout, which unfortunately just makes things more confusing. If you aren't somebody who's able to be awake once lineups come out or once the games start, which they are an hour and a half earlier today, but that's still 4 a.m. Eastern. I would be looking at those ones that you're circling that have low chances of rain. But none of the numbers seem that high, so there's a decent chance everything goes through. It's just kind of a matter of how much risk you're willing to take if you're not able to set things at the last second.
Yeah, the 4 a.m. wake-up call isn't always easy, but looking at Kia and Lotte, for them, the visiting teams, looking like we're going to get 0% rain, if this is indeed correct. We never know. Weather, always crazy. But that's what we got here. Some other questions as well. Hanwha, under all day. I mean, look at what we were just talking about. They can't seem to score any runs. We just talked about Jared Hoying. You agree here, right? You got to pick the under after what they've been doing.
Yeah, though, if you're looking at the combined over-under between the two teams, their pitching's probably bad enough that they can still hit the over, even if all the runs go to the Bears. But pretty much any chance to pick against Hanwha is something I'd want to do right now.
That's fair. They are quite bad at pitching. Some other thoughts. We got a Dinos question here, and that's what we're talking about now. Kiwoom NC. The question is, what are our thoughts on the Dinos' future lines? And look at this Dinos team. They lost last night. I was feeling pretty confident about them. On a streak. Establishing a tone early in the series. Winning a lot of games. But then they go out there and they lose game one against Kiwoom. Not a great team, not a horrible team. But what are we thinking about Dinos right now? Are you a little less confident in them maybe after their loss yesterday?
Not exactly. They're playing a good Heroes team. They're 2-2 this week. They've lost once out of 3 to the Bears and once out of 1 so far against the Heroes. But that's 2 of the better teams. You don't expect them to go 5-1, 6-0 every week. If they were to say lose the next 2 against the Heroes, I might be a little worried. But not. This is even the best team in the league is going to lose sometimes. I'm not sure specifically what futures line is being talked about here, but my general thoughts on the Dinos is that they're incredible and dominating in pretty much every way. So I'm pretty pro Dinos on anything I get to see.
That sounds pretty good because they're first in every offensive category, first in every pitching category as well. Are we just always backing them here, looking at our lineup here? Aaron Altair hitting pretty low, and when you look at what he's been doing recently, I mean, that says a lot of great things that you have, 7 other batters better than Aaron Altair, who's, on a pretty impressive hit streak right now, and has shown some power as well. How do we feel about this Dinos lineup? Is it just pretty much default Dinos when you pick a lineup?
Yeah, I mean, I've joked in my cheat sheets column that I should make my stacks section be stacks that aren't the Dinos, because almost every day there were stacking. I didn't write them up as one of my stacks today, but I'd be pretty happy stacking them today. They're going against Junhee Han, who was good as a reliever last year, but has been pretty mediocre this season, as you can see from his ERA. The Dinos pitcher tonight isn't great either, so they're not necessarily going to be huge favorites tonight. Jae-Hawk Lee, he's one of their weaker arms, so I'd be happy to own some Heroes hitters as well tonight. I would still favor the Dinos because, everything we just talked about. Their lineup is just so deep. I mean, any one of their top 8 hitters, I would be happy owning most every day. Even Hee-Dong Kwon is fine, but he bats 9th, so it's not exactly what you want, though he does move up against lefties sometime, and as you can see from his batting average, when he's hitting near the top of the order, he's also somebody I'm interested in. Altair is still quite expensive despite hitting so low in the order, but I think he's still worth it. Normally, conventional wisdom says you want guys at the top of the order because they'll come to the plate more often and they'll be surrounded by better hitters, but he's just been so good. I'm really surprised he hasn't moved back up, though it's not like there's anybody you'd necessarily dump to the bottom. It's a bit interesting. I think they were considered one of the more forward-thinking progressive teams, but one of the central tests of how you'd see how progressive a baseball team is these days is what they're doing with the number 2 hitter. The old school way of doing a number 2 hitter is having a guy who can bunt people over, and usually one of your weaker hitters. And that is actually what the Dinos are doing. Myung-Ki Lee, despite that awesome batting average, is mostly just a singles hitter. So he actually is one of the worst hitters on the team, despite the fact that he'd be, one of the best few on most teams. So it's interesting to see that they're sticking with him up there. Obviously, it's paid off lately, as you see how his OPS has soared like 100 points over the last 8-ish games, 130 points. So obviously it's working right now, and even he is somebody I'd be happy to own, mostly because he bats second for the Dinos. But I'd be curious to see if Altair moves up soon. If he ever does move up and his price doesn't go up, he becomes somebody I'm looking to own pretty much everywhere.
I like that. You gotta play the lineups, you gotta play what they're playing. And when you see them play a guy and have confidence in him, even if he is a little weaker guy, but he's in the second spot in the lineup, good stuff can happen when you get into the plate more and more, every game. Is there any batter specifically on Kiwoom that we're targeting? Bung Ho Park, maybe, 4 spot.
Generally not him, as you can see from that 195 ERA. He can still hit the ball out of the park, but he's just striking out way too much. Jung-Ho Lee, their number 3 hitter, 21-year-old outfielder, is usually the guy that I'm looking for. He never hit more than 6 homers in a season before this year, but he already has 5. And he's adding power despite not sacrificing any contact. As you can see there, though, he's somewhat of a question for tonight. He fouled the ball off his shin Thursday, but the fact that he was able to play Friday means I think he'll be starting. He's not somebody I'd include if you're unable to check your lineups at the last minute, but if you are, he's definitely somebody I'd be keeping an eye out for, batting 3rd in one of the better lineups in the league.
Yeah, and wrapping up this Dinos Kiwoom Heroes series, Joe Kim says here on YouTube, credit needs to go to the Dinos 6 through 9 batters. I want to pull up the Dinos page here while we're looking at them. A good batting average, keeps the bases juiced for, Sung Bum. What are we thinking about the Dinos? We said this already, but are we that confident in paying up for an Aaron Altair or someone that is in that 6 through 9 spot?
Right, that's the thing. I mean, like mentioned there, basically all their hitters are good. They've got unparalleled depth this season, and some of the guys like Altair are guys that you expect to keep hitting well. Even say in the 6th spot, Sukmin Park has a long history of one of the better hitters in the league. So you can find Dinos up and down the lineup for whatever position you need, whatever price point you need. They're generally not the cheapest because they're all so good, but you can get a couple reasonably budget options. I'm pretty much any dyno, pretty much any game, unless they happen to be playing one of the best starters in the league. Yeah, even the guys in the bottom half have the talent to be in the top half for a lot of other teams.
And even when they're facing great teams, you'll see the Bears, they win their series against the Bears, 2-1 in their most recent series, and even going back also won their previous series against the Bears. Again, I'm seeing a lot of people hopping on, some new fans here. Hit us with your questions, your KBO thoughts and picks as well. We're going, as long as you guys need to get some help on your KBO lineups here. So we're looking at, where are we here? That was our teams. Our lineups, looking at, talking some weather, talking some quality batters maybe lower in the lineup. We're looking at what team, got a question here, which team is your go-to for cash games? Dexter says this here. Eric, what do you think for cash games? You want to maybe explain this for players that are maybe new to daily fantasy? What is a cash game, and who would you specifically target for that game type?
Right. So usually when people are talking about cash games, they're talking about the sort of games where more people win, but they don't win as much. So it'll be, say, a double up contest where almost half the people will win, but everybody wins the same thing. They'll just double their money, versus a big tournament where a small portion of people will win and the prizes scale so that the top person makes a big multiple of their entry fee and scaling down so that, maybe roughly a quarter or so will win something. So in a cash game, you're looking for high floor guys. Generally, the answer is you got to look at the pitching matchups and stack against whoever's the weaker pitchers. But without knowing that, I mean, it's got to be pretty much you just look at the top lineups in the league. So it's going to be the dynos, like I said, pretty much all the time. Again, in cash games, you care less about who other people own because all you're trying to do is generally say get the top half or top third, and there's no bonus for being top overall. So you don't necessarily need to differentiate yourself that much. So it's almost always going to be safe to stack the dynos. It's almost always going to be safe to stack the Bears. They beat up pretty much everybody. Those are the two obvious ones, and then whoever else is playing a weak pitcher.
I like that. We got another question here, specifically talking about daily fantasy here. Alexander says, hi, everyone. How do we become more successful in KBO, DFS, and GPP? A lot of research and building around pitchers first. So then GPP is explain. I'll let you take that away here.
Yeah, GPP is another word for those big tournament games. So these are when you're looking for a more high risk, high reward kind of lineup and trying to hit on those few guys that nobody else has. Generally, I am looking at pitchers first for those. I feel like if I can hit the best pitching matchup, I'll have a good chance. So sometimes what I'll try to do is go away from, the most obvious pitcher, but take generally like the cheapest pitcher that I'm comfortable with on the thought that I need somebody to have a better day than expected. So if I can go find the cheapest pitcher or two that I'm at least feel safe with, then I can stack around them with as many of the most expensive hitters as I can. I definitely generally build pitcher first, especially because then you know which lineups you're not looking at because you obviously don't want to start a hitter against your chosen pitcher. So yeah, find some cheap pitchers that you're happy enough with, and then fill out from there.
I like that. And they can always check out rotowire.com for our KBO projected starting pitchers for them to find some good value. Maybe look a little beyond just the ERA here. You can click on each pitcher's information, get a little bit more in-depth research on each player. Got another question here. Sean, any news on big lineup changes / turnover for Hanwha? Trying to model their win probability is becoming a nightmare. I bet you the Eagles players would agree with you. It's been a nightmare for them when you look at what they've been doing, when we talked about in terms of the winning department. Not a lot of it. Is there any big moves that you saw, Eric, that maybe give you a little chance for optimism? Or all the guys are bringing up pretty much just minor leaguers they're trying to catch lightning in a bottle with?
Yeah, it seems like the top few hitters have been the same even after they sent up and down all those guys. So the guys that you would have any interest at all in the first place are still there, and there are not many of them. I mean, yeah, Young-Kyu Lee is their best qualified hitter, their best regular, and he's roughly average. Yeah, not sure exactly how to model their win probability, but a 0 should be pretty close to what you are looking for at this point. I don't know if they have anything else coming down the pipeline, but nothing that they've done so far has worked, that's for sure.
Well, hopefully they can mix it up and try to have some sort of victory coming up soon. Hopefully not tonight, so we get that history. But wrapping up here, we're looking at injury news. We talked about Ramos, him being a guy that you maybe worry about despite the Twins being a pretty solid team. Is there any other notable names we're seeing on this list here that, maybe concern you, maybe change a stack or two? I'm thinking maybe Tyler Saladino, but who are you looking at?
Yeah, as far as things to look for tonight, Saladino, as you mentioned, he suffered some minor injury, was back, I think it was Thursday. He wasn't in the lineup for Friday's game. The Friday's game didn't happen. It was rained out. So I do like the Lions tonight. I wrote them up as one of the potential stacks. They're going against Odrisamer Despaigne, who was awesome earlier in the year, but quite bad the last 2 starts. So if you're looking to stack Lions, Saladino's definitely one to include if he's around. But again, that's probably a last-minute check. Jung-Hoo Lee, who I mentioned earlier for the Heroes, minor injury, not sure if he's playing tonight, as well as Hyung-Woo Choi for the Tigers with that sore back, who may or may not be playing tonight. As far as other recent changes, sticking with the Lions, they got Ja-Wook Koo back. He's a left-handed outfielder, usually bats, I think, third. He's a guy you want to go to pretty often if you're stacking Lions against a righty. He's been back for a couple games. I think he got 5 hits in 3 games earlier in the week. And another injury to note is Chris Flexon of the Bears. He's out with something. I don't think we know what that something is yet, so we don't know how long he's going to be out. But if you remember, the Bears are already down a starter. There, we do know now. Sore hamstring, there you go. Missed that one coming through. We're not sure how long he'll be out, but they need to dip into yet another starter because they're already without Young-Chan Lee, who's out for the year with Tommy John surgery. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities to pick on some really inexperienced Bears starters. They already had one of the shakier rotations, so it's going to get even worse.
Are you worried about this Bears pitching rotation because they already have one of the worst, pitching staffs there is in the league, allowing a lot of runs per game? Look at exactly, 6 runs a game, almost as many as they score, and that's saying a lot because the Bears score a lot of runs. Are we worried with this Flexon injury long term that maybe when you don't have that great foreign American pitcher every 5th or 6th day, that maybe they're going to suffer?
Yeah, I mean, they've been able to overcome it so far, but there comes a certain point where, maybe you can get by with your 6th starter, but not your 8th. They've been able to hit their way through it all season. I think they're still a playoff team, even with their current pitching staff, but there's clearly a Josh Lindblom-sized hole on that team. He won the MVP last year before coming back to the States this offseason. And they clearly are needing a guy of that talent level. I think it definitely hurts their chances to win it all if their pitching stays beat up all year. But as far as we can tell, this Flexon thing doesn't seem like it's a long-term issue.
Yeah, and for everyone, trying to keep updated with all the injury news, we got those quick updates here on rotowire.com, our KBO news section. You click on there, all the latest stuff, some good stuff too. Even guys that are healthy, 6 scoreless against the Dinos, that type of stuff, keeping you updated. And now we wrap up with our Twitter question. Twitter at RotoWire KBO, always open. We got some great comments and interaction today on the broadcast, going a little longer for you guys here. Joe says, first time checking out your show. Thanks for doing the show, guys. Thank you. We appreciate it a lot. And keep all your KBO questions coming. We're here to answer those questions and help you with your lineups and helping you navigate the crazy cool world of the KBO. So, Eric, let me know what your thoughts here on this Twitter question. Which bottom half team do you want to see on TV more often? We just saw the full series. We can pull up the ESPN schedule here. But what do you think about the bottom half teams you'd like to see a little bit more?
I think it has to be the Wiz. There's a few teams in the bottom half that are somewhat interesting. I'm interested to see if the Wyverns really are going to make a push back towards the top. The Lions seem to win a few more games than I expect them to all the time, as do the Giants. But the Wiz is definitely the one for me. I mean, if you like scoring, I'd love to see them on TV more often because they score a ton of runs and give up even more. The main reason, though, I want to see more Wiz is Baek Ho-gong, their 20-year-old slugger who was the Rookie of the Year as an 18-year-old, got even better last year. He's one of the best hitters in the league, and he's quite young. I don't think we've seen him more than once, if that, on ESPN, because they were not televised early, and then he was out 3 weeks with a wrist issue. So I think we're supposed to see him last night against the Lions, but that got rained out. I think we're getting him Sunday, if I remember the schedule right. But I want to see as much of him as I can. I think he's one of the more compelling young players to watch in the league. How about you? Who's your bad team? Still the Wyverns?
I like the Wiz offense, like you said. I love to see some runs. You get the bat flip, you get the guys running around the bases. That's fun. I mean, Dan Straley and the Lotte Giants, that's fun. Great pitchers duel is always great, like we just saw last night / this morning. But I don't know. The Wyverns don't really excite me that I really want to watch them. I don't really see them having a big starter. Pinto maybe on a good day, but really not. I think when you look at the Wiz and you look at Mel Rojas Jr. as well, what he can do on a night-to-night basis, putting up 4 for 5 with a home run, that type of stuff, I think is really fun to watch, and it's really great for promoting the league with all the bat flips. So I think I agree with you. The KT Wiz, maybe the Lions, like you said. Tyler Saladino is always fun, but I think I'd go with the Wiz as well. And that's just gonna just about wrap us up here. Yes, thanks again. Thank you for all tuning in here. Getting some great reaction here, going on a couple weeks now. This finding our flow. Hope you enjoy the graphics as well. Eric, any other final tips for everyone heading into some weekend KBO action that is earlier? Thankfully, that is earlier. A little sooner, 4 a.m. Eastern, 1 a.m. Pacific tonight. Any other final thoughts?
Yeah, just hope we don't get more rainouts. Those are not the most fun for Americans who aren't up at 3 a.m. or wherever. So I saw one comment letting us know that June and July are the rainy months. That's I think we're definitely seeing that. So hopefully we get all these weekend games going through as plans.
Yeah,
but definitely something that looks like we'll have to keep an eye on for the next quite a while.
Yeah, doubleheaders are great, but you already get 5 games a day, so I think you need to throw more in there. So I think it's a good amount. So hopefully we'll see some good weather and some more KBO action. As always, be sure to follow us on Twitter at RotoWire KBO, and if you're watching on YouTube, leave a like, hit that subscribe button. Really appreciate it. And as always, RotoWire KBO for everything you need on all fantasy sports, especially KBO.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody.